looked like a horse there. Oh, there's a crush there.
There goes Asgreen. A cursed weekend for Soudal Quickstep.
What can Keeson do to challenge him?
It's Pogacar 1, Vingegaard 0.
Welcome back to the GCN Racing News Show. This week, 5 things we learned from Strade Bianche, Tour de France champions going head-to-head in March, when celebrations go wrong, plus gifts and bitter rivalries within teams. This week in the world of racing, we learnt that Filip Maciejczuk needs a new pair of shades.
Oh dear, new pair of those needed.
Makes you wince, doesn't it, when you think about the cost of those shades? We also learnt that world gravel champion Gianni Vermeers is not afraid of using his elbows, even after the race.
It's a long time trial, and so for me, I thought, no, he can't hold on for that long. But to just do it and to like commit to it today, yeah, incredible.
That instant was caught in the background of our interview with Laura Kenny, with EF's James Shaw amusingly pointing out to the Belgian that the whole incident had been caught on camera. Talking of cameras, we also learnt that photo finishes aren't Caleb Ewan's best friend this year. After being beaten by Tim Merlier in the UAE Tour recently, last week he was deemed to have come second to Gerben Thijssen at the Grand Prix Montserrat. We also found out last week that Primož Roglic is returning to racing today. The Slovenian was a late addition to Jumbo-Visma's Tirreno Adriatico lineup, so he'll kick his season off with an 11-kilometre individual time trial, which you can watch live on GCN Plus in all territories. So a great time to subscribe if you haven't done so already. And finally, we learnt that, monument or not, Strade Bianche is one of the best races on the calendar. But what did we learn from Saturday? Well, number one, Tom Pidcock underlined that his bike handling is off the charts. This is what turned out to be Pidcock's winning move at Strade Bianche, dropping Baggioli and Bettiol like the stones they were riding over, and giving the camera motorbikes all sorts of problems as he overtook them one by one. Now, we've seen it all before, of course, from last year's descent off the Galibier at the Tour de France to the YouTube video that went viral recently. But although it's not a surprise, it doesn't make it any less impressive or entertaining when you see it again. The most impressive part of his ride for me, though, was the fact that he never had more than a minute's advantage over the chase group. Almost 50 kilometres alone, or at least doing all the work on his own, very little help from TV motorbikes, a gap that came right down to 7 seconds with 10 Ks to go, and yet he still managed to hold everyone off and take the biggest one-day road race win of his career to date. Now, it's hard to figure out where this win will sit in the order of importance or prestige for Pidcock. Olympic mountain bike champion, cyclocross world champion, winner of that Tour de France stage on Alpe d'Huez, but it doesn't really matter. What is surprising is that Strade Bianche is just his 4th professional win on the road. I dare say that figure will have changed significantly by the end of this year. What I loved about his post-race interview, though, was this.
And when we spoke this morning, you said you'd know, if you'd had the legs. At what point did you know that you had the legs?
On Tuesday.
There's some confidence for you. But how did you know, though, Tom?
Two black cats crossed in front of me in the last 2 days, so
Right, okay.
I don't know if that's good luck or bad luck.
Well, I mean, it's good luck now, right?
So there you go. Watch out for a few black cats, walk under a few ladders, open a few umbrellas indoors, and you too will have luck on your side. We also learned that even if you're the best team in the world, things aren't always rosy within. On the men's side, Tish Benoit was not best pleased when he looked around with 15 Ks to go and saw what he thought was his teammates closing the gap with other riders on his wheel. That wasn't, in fact, the case. Attila Valter had got away from the others and didn't help tow them across. But then again, the teamwork between the two of them was, well, it didn't seem like there was a lot of teamwork being done, did it? Had just one of them been fully committed to the chase, that final 7 seconds to Pidcock may have been closed. We'll never know. Now, they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and that is certainly the case with this one, taken soon after they crossed the finish line. Wouldn't you have loved to be a fly on the wall on the Jumbo-Visma team bus after that race? On the women's side, 2 riders from the same team did work well together and then fought it out for the win between them. Demi Vollering set off in pursuit of lone leader Kristin Faulkner and was later joined by teammate and defending champion Lotte Kopecky. Now, being a cynic and a long-time fan of cycling, I expected that the order across the line had been predetermined, that the team management would have dictated who would win. And I was still of that thinking pretty much until they crossed the finish line on Saturday. It turns out that I was wrong, again. The two of them sprinted it out, and it was only when we got a slow motion finish line shot that we could see Vollering had taken the win. Her first win, in fact, in 10 months. What got tongues wagging, though, was the seemingly frosty atmosphere between the two of them after that line. There was no embrace between them initially. In fact, there was almost an awkward distance between them for some time as the result was decided. In one of her post-race interviews, Vollering said that she thought Kopecky would gift her the win, having worked for Kopecky the weekend before, and that she was surprised when she upped the pace towards the line. In another interview, she said she was surprised by Kopecky's actions. Now, as a fan, I thought it was great. So often, if two riders from the same team come to the line together, somebody in the team car or management has already decided who goes across the line first. Think back to Mappe many years ago at Paris-Roubaix, or more recently, Rialini and Longo Borghini at UAE, or maybe Kwiatkowski and Carapaz at the Tour de France a few years back. I think it's great that Vollering and Kopecky raced for the line, but at the same time, I'm not sure it's going to help the team dynamics in the upcoming Spring Classics. Time will tell. My third takeaway from Saturday is that Mathieu van der Poel is not a robot. When he made this attack, we were all thinking the same thing. Here we go. But soon after, it became clear that he just didn't have the legs to fight for the win. Now, with anyone else, that would not be at all surprising. This was his first race back since the Cyclocross World Championships, after which he presumably took a short break. But it's a testament to his talent and previous results that we expect so much of him, no matter how his preparation went. And the same could be said for Annemiek van Vleuten. Anything less than a win is seen as a failure because she's won so much. Like Van der Poel, she simply didn't have the legs to compete with the best on Saturday and will now head to Tenerife to prepare for the Tour of Flanders at altitude. I don't think any of us should really worry too much about their form though. They will be back and back winning sooner rather than later. Number 4, Peter Sagan is well past his best and it's really difficult to watch. Just a handful of years ago, Sagan would have been the top favourite with most bookies for a race like Strade Bianche and the most talked about rider amongst fans on the lead into this race. Ahead of the race this year though, nobody was really talking about him and he was 250 to 1 to win. Fair odds, as it turned out. He was never really in the race and he was out the back almost as soon as things got serious. Now, if I'm honest, I am finding it awkward to watch. This is a man who seemed to be able to do anything at will on almost any terrain back in his heyday. A man who's won 121 pro bike races and he's still only 32 years old. I don't begrudge him taking one last big paycheck and then retiring from the road. I just hate seeing him as a shadow of his former self. I want to remember Peter Sagan as he was, not how I'm seeing him now. Now, I'm sure that when the dust settles on his career, we'll all remember him at his best. I just hope that we see one more vintage Sagan performance before he hangs up his road wheels at the end of this year. And finally, number 5, we learned that Kristin Faulkner is not someone you should allow 2 minutes up the road. To be honest, that's something I think the whole peloton should already have been aware of before Saturday. I couldn't believe it when they let her go and then played cat and mouse as the gap crept up to 2 minutes. I was literally screaming at the screen. What are you doing? SD Works, Movistar, FDJ, just 3 of the big teams that didn't get an organised chase going. All was retrieved in the end, at least for one of those teams, but in my mind, they were playing with fire. And on a different day, it could have all gone horribly wrong for them. Third place for Faulkner was the reward for her efforts on the day, but I'm now going to award her this week's GCN Rider of the Week. That was an incredibly strong performance. Anyway, let me know what your main takeaways were from Saturday's races in the comments section down below. I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts on those races. Don't forget, incidentally, that you can still buy our t-shirt dedicated to those infamous white gravel roads, and we've got pretty much the complete classics collection over on shop.globalcyclingnetwork.com. The one I'm wearing now is La Primavera, which is now less than 2 weeks away, believe it or not. I will move on now to Paris-Nice, where simple sprinters' days are never simple sprinters' days. Despite a lack of wind to break things up on stage 1 yesterday, we had a hell of a lot of action, even from the 2 most recent Tour de France victors. Today, Pogacar was the first to make a move, reacting to an attack from EF's Nilsen Powless. I don't think Pogacar ever really thinks about what would be the most sensible thing to do in a stage race. He just sees an attack and follows it, or he sees a climb and attacks it. Not that I ever want that to change. It's absolutely fantastic entertainment. What was interesting there, though, was that Jonas Vingegaard was not only not close to Pogačar, but he was also isolated from his teammates in the group that bridged across over the top of that climb. Not the same team that we saw here this time last year, that's for sure. On the final climb of the day, Vingegaard was far more vigilant, but he was unable to prevent Pogačar taking the 6-second bonus and unable to take any himself. Pogačar looked keen to press on over the top of that final unclassified climb, but Vingegaard played the sprinter card because they were working for Olaf Koy on the day. And down to a sprint it came. Soudal Quickstep took control, but as they ran out of men, Merlier decided to let the wheel go to Seneschal, sensing he'd have to hit the front too early if he didn't. And that was a great move. It forced Van Poppel to start his lead out for Sam Bennett a little bit earlier than he'd hoped for, whilst Merlier slipped onto the wheel of Koy and then smoothly sprinted around him and Bennett before the finish line. The quickest finisher, though, that day was Arnaud de Lee, who found himself out of position inside the last kilometre. He'd have to settle for 5th, but that was seriously impressive. The race continues today with another stage that looks likely to finish in a bunt sprint, whilst on Tuesday we have a team time trial with a difference. 33 kilometres, and each rider across the line gets their own time rather than getting the time of the 4th or 5th rider from each team across it. Now, I'm not expecting to see huge changes in the way that it's ridden, regardless of that rule change, but it could make for some interesting viewing. Earlier on last week, we had Le Samyn men's and women's. Always great racing because it's rarely controlled by a big team. In the men's, Milan Monton of Lotto Destiny took the 2nd win of his pro career. So pleased was he with it, and so rigorous was his celebration, he dislocated his shoulder. Now, he said in his post-race interview he had to celebrate and say ouch at the very same time. He wasn't the only injured rider at the finish, though. Kasper Asgreen had yet more bad luck, crashing in the last kilometre. And it was another race to forget for Soudal Quickstep, who'd already lost Fabio Jakobsen to a crash earlier on in the day. Their best-placed rider in that race was Stan van Tricht in 51st position. In the women's, Marta Bastianelli outsprinted Maria Confalonieri to take the win, with Vittoria Guazzini making it an all-Italian podium in 3rd place on the day. Meanwhile, down in Italy, Gaia Riolini was gifted the win on Sunday. She, of course, finished 2nd to Longo Borghini, her teammate at the UAE Tour, but at Trofeo Oro, Amanda Spratt and the team allowed the Italian to cross the line first. The two of them had plenty of time to decide the outcome, and taking all the applause, they finished almost 2 minutes ahead of the next group on the road, led home by Martina Alzini of Cofidis. So in the end, a decent weekend for the Trek Segafredo women's team, who unfortunately had to start Strade Bianche without Longo Borghini or Van Dijk due to illness. So what have we got coming up for you on GCN Plus this week? 2 of the most prestigious one-week races of the season, that's what. Paris-Nice, as mentioned, will continue through to Sunday, live in Europe plus the Asia-Pacific, excluding China, Japan and New Zealand. But today also sees the start of Tirreno Adriatico, the race of the 2 seas, which is available in all GCN Plus territories, to remind you. It's where Wout van Aert will commence his road season, along with the aforementioned Primoz Roglic. They will go up against Mathieu van der Poel in the puncher finishes, but it won't be all about those 3. Pidcock, Alaphilippe, Kuznetsov and Girmay are all in attendance. We've got a summit finish at Sarnano Sassotetto on Friday, easy for me to say. That one's 13 kilometres at over 7%, and that is where the big gaps on GC should appear. Geraint Thomas, Thibaut Pinot, Alexander Vlasov, Adam Yates, Mikel Landa, Taman Allensman, Enric Mas, Joao Almeida, Jay Vine, Wilco Kelderman, Ben O'Connor, Brandon McNulty and Guillaume Martin will be amongst those vying for the win on that stage and on the GC. Quite the list of riders. The second stage of the race should be a sprint though, and we have plenty of fast riders on the start list too. Jakobsen, Philipsen, Cavendish, Gaviria, Viviani, Sagan and Buani, amongst others. It's one of my favourite races of the entire season, and I'm sure this edition will not disappoint. The stage I'm most looking forward to though, in Tirreno Adriatico, comes this Saturday. Stage 6 features a number of the famous muri, or walls, that I love about this race. Short, incredibly steep, and perfect for doing damage. Now I dare say that a lot of the riders who are using the race to prepare for Milano-San Remo will have that stage marked firmly as a priority in their road books. Beyond those 2 stage races, we also have the next round of the Women's World Tour on Saturday, the Miron Ronde van Drenthe, featuring 3 ascents of the infamous Vanberg before a fairly long and very flat run into the finish line. Lorena Vibes won there last year, sprinting so fast at the finish, she finished over a second ahead of Elisa Balsamo in 2nd. Both riders are likely to be amongst the favourites this year too. That one is available in all GCN Plus territories. We also have the men's race coming to you on Sunday, but we've also got this week's World of Cycling on Wednesday, where I'll be joined by Paris-Nice commentators Rob Hatch and Sean Kelly. We are going to be discussing whether the sport's top riders spend too much time avoiding each other and not enough time actually racing against each other. As mentioned, that will be coming out this Wednesday. In other news, Trek Segafredo's Antonio Tiberi admitted last week that he killed a cat in one of the most bizarre stories I've read in recent times. Apparently, he pointed an air rifle at the cat, pulled the trigger and did not expect to kill it. I'm not sure if that's because he didn't think his aim was good enough or that he didn't think an air rifle would kill a cat. Either way, he's been found guilty and fined €4,000 by the local police and issued what seemed to be a genuine and heartfelt apology on his own behalf, as he should of course. His team, meanwhile, has suspended him for 20 days without pay, and those wages from that period will be donated to an animal charity. But I just can't get my head around what he was thinking, not just in firing a gun, but in purchasing an air rifle in the first place. Right, a quick look at the win count for the men's World Tour teams now, and despite their relatively lacklustre performances at the one-day classics this year, Soudal Quickstep are now level pegging with UAE Team Emirates at the top of the table. Both teams have taken 11 wins so far this season. That puts them 1 ahead of EF Education Easy Post and 4 ahead of Jumbo, Ineos and Intermarché, all of whom sit on 7. Alpecin de Koning are unfortunately yet to get themselves off the mark, whilst Groupama, Bora and Astana all have 1 win apiece. And finally, it looks like Domenico Pozzovivo has finally found himself a new home. This is according to the Gazzetta newspaper over in Italy, who say that he'll be riding for Israel Premier Tech in 2023. That is all for this week. Enjoy Paris-Nice, enjoy Tirreno, and I'll be back this time next week to review both. Goodbye for now.